The train rattled through endless plains of snow, its iron wheels groaning as though even the machine itself dreaded what lay ahead. I pressed my forehead against the frozen glass and saw the first traces of Stalingrad on the horizon, pillars of black smoke clawing at the winter sky, as if the city itself was screaming. My hands shook, not from the cold, but from the certainty that whatever waited there would change me forever. We were told this would be quick, that the city was already on its knees, that we would march in and claim victory. I wanted to believe it. Every man on that train wanted to believe it. But when the doors slid open and the wind hit us, carrying the stench of death and ash, the truth settled in our bones. This was no victory march. This was a descent into hell. Taunt. Streets were ruins, charred skeletons of buildings, jutting like broken teeth. Civilians huddled in cellars, their faces gaunt, eyes hollow. They did not look at us as liberators or conquerors. They looked at us as one looks at a storm, something inevitable, destructive, and beyond mercy. On my first night, I wrote in my diary, "Stalingrad is not a city. It's a graveyard pretending to be alive." The fighting was ceaseless. Every corner, every room, every shadow seemed to hold an enemy. We fought over staircases, over kitchens, over piles of rubble that once had names and addresses. The Russians emerged like phantoms, striking swiftly and vanishing before we could breathe. They knew the ruins better than we ever would. For them, this was home. For us, it was a tomb we hadn't yet realized was ours. One morning, after days without sleep, I stumbled into a factory shell with my unit. The air was thick with smoke, the ground littered with shattered glass and twisted iron. We found bodies frozen in place, hands still clutching rifles, their eyes wide as though death had surprised them mid-breath. I bent down to close one soldier's eyes, and as I did, a shot rang out. The man beside me fell, blood pooling in the snow at my feet. We returned fire, bullets sparking against steel, echoing like thunder in the hollow building. Hours passed toward, maybe minutes. Time meant nothing. When the silence came, we counted our dead. Too many, always too many. I wrote, "We fight for rooms. We fight for bricks, and each brick is bought with blood." At night, we huddled in basements, our uniforms stiff with frost. Hunger gnawed at us, a constant pain. We shared crusts of bread so hard they cracked our teeth, thawed snow in our helmets to drink. Some men whispered of home, of wives and children. Others stared blankly into the dark, lost already, though their hearts still beat. The bombardments never stopped. The sky burned red with artillery. The ground shook beneath us. Sometimes, when the shells fell close, I thought the earth itself would split open and swallow us whole. I pressed my diary to my chest, scrawling words with numb fingers. Each day here is borrowed. Each breath is stolen. And yet, through it all, something strange lingered. At times, in the rare silence between shelling, I felt the city watching. Its ruins seemed alive, whispering in the wind, groaning in the shifting walls. Once, as I stood guard in the snow, I swore I heard footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate. But when I turned, there was nothing, only darkness and ruin. The others laughed when I told them. "Your nerves," they said. Maybe they were right. But even then, I knew Stalingrad was no ordinary battlefield. It was something deeper, something older, something that would consume us all. On my 10th day, I was ordered to lead a patrol through the northern sector. Snow crunched beneath our boots as we moved through streets that no longer had names. The silence was unbearable, more terrifying than the gunfire. When the ambush came, it was sudden, merciless. Bullets tore through the air. Men fell screaming. I was thrown against a wall, my vision spinning. When I could see again, my comrades were scattered, lifeless in the snow. I should have died there. By all rights, I was finished. Yet somehow, I breathed. Somehow, I stood. The Russians had vanished into the ruins, leaving me alone among the bodies. I pressed my shaking hands to my chest, searching for wounds, but found nothing. No blood, no holes in my coat. I was alive when I should not have been. That night, as I wrote in my diary, I stopped mid-sentence. For on the page, in a hand not my own, were words I had never written. You were meant to stay. By November, the city had become a trap. At first, we still clung to the hope that reinforcements would come, that supplies would reach us. But soon, the Russians closed their iron ring around Stalingrad, and the truth could no longer be denied. We were encircled, alone, forgotten. The officers tried to reassure us. They told us the Führer would never abandon us, that relief was already on its way. But we saw the truth in their eyes. They ate no more than we did. Their cheeks sank, their hands trembled, their uniforms hung loose on wasted frames. The proud army that had marched east was now a starving mob, clinging to scraps of discipline. Food disappeared first. Our rations shrank to nothing, frozen crumbs of bread, handfuls of moldy flour, a few spoonfuls of watery soup. Men fought over dead horses, hacking frozen flesh with bayonets, cooking it over smoldering rubble. When no animals were left, we boiled leather belts, scraped wallpaper for the glue. Hunger hollowed us until we no longer looked like men. I wrote in my diary, we are being eaten alive, not by the enemy, but by the emptiness inside us. The cold was merciless. Temperatures dropped so low that our breath froze in our beards, our boots cracked, our fingers turned black. Some men slept and never woke, their bodies stiff in the morning, snow clinging to their lashes like frost on glass. I wrapped myself in rags, pressed my diary against my chest, as though its words could keep me warm. And still the city whispered. At night, when the bombardment ceased, when silence spread too thickly, I heard footsteps pacing outside our cellar. Always the same slow, deliberate, circling. The others heard nothing, or pretended they didn't. I dared once to open the door, rifle ready. There was nothing, only snow falling, silent and pure. Yet the footprints remained, pressed deep into the white, though no one stood there. The men around me began to change. Hunger and despair twisted their minds. One, Hoffman, began talking to the corpses, saluting them, calling them by rank. Another, Schreiber, swore he saw his dead brother beckoning from a ruined window. He walked into the night and never returned. I wanted to laugh at them, to deny it, but one night, as I opened my diary to write, I found words on the page that I had not written. The same slanted hand I had seen before. You belong to the city now. I dropped the book in horror, but when I picked it up again, the words were gone. Only the faint smudge of ink remained where before I had touched the page. The shelling grew heavier as the Russians pressed closer. Buildings collapsed around us, burying men alive. The air was thick with dust and screams. Once, after a bombardment, I staggered into the street and saw bodies frozen upright in the snow, eyes open, mouths twisted. For a moment, I thought they were alive. They seemed to follow me with their gaze. I wrote, "The dead here do not rest." Wait. We no longer fought for victory. We fought for a single bite of food, a single breath of warmth. And yet, orders still came. Hold this building, retake that street. The absurdity gnawed at us as cruelly as hunger. Why hold a ruin? Why die for rubble? The city itself seemed to mock us, devouring us piece by piece. One day, during a desperate skirmish, I was hit. A blast threw me against the wall, my vision blurred, my ears ringing. I felt warmth spreading through my coat. This is it, I thought. It's how I end. My comrades moved on without me, convinced I was finished. I remember lying in the snow, staring at the gray sky, waiting for the light to fade. But the light did not fade. The warmth was not blood. It was nothing. When I tore open my coat, there was no wound, no hole, no mark. I was unhurt. Yet the men had left me, their footsteps fading into the ruins. I was alone, discarded, left for dead. I crawled into the ruins, clutching my diary. My hands shook as I opened it. On the page, in that same alien script, were the words, "Not yet." By January, Stalingrad was no longer a battlefield, it was a graveyard. The snow covered the bodies so thickly that the streets looked smooth, as if the dead themselves had become part of the ground. The air stank of smoke, frozen flesh, and something sour I still cannot name. We were no longer soldiers. Our weapons lay empty, our bellies hollow, our eyes sunk deep into skulls. Men stumbled like shadows through the ruins, too weak to stand guard, too broken to fight. I wrote, "We are not an army. We are carrion waiting for the crows." Every day, more men fell. Some froze where they sat, their rifles still in their hands. Others wasted away so completely they seemed to vanish, their bodies light as twigs when we dragged them aside. We tried to bury them at first, but soon there were too many. We left them where they fell, their glassy eyes staring through the snow. Madness spread faster than hunger. Hoffman spoke to corpses as though they were comrades, still alive, whispering orders, saluting them. When we tried to pull him away, he snarled like an animal and struck us with his fists. Schreiber, who had sworn his dead brother was calling him, disappeared into the storm one night and never returned. And I began to hear whispers too. In the stillness between bombardments, I heard voices echoing inside the ruins. Sometimes they spoke in German, sometimes Russian, sometimes in no language I recognize. Once I swore I heard my mother's voice calling my name from the darkness of a broken window. I nearly walked to it before I stopped myself, trembling. It was then that my diary changed. When I opened it one night, whole sentences appeared in the margins, written in my own hand, though I did not recall writing them. The city watches. The city keeps what it is owed. I touched the words with a finger. The ink smudged, still fresh. I stared at it until my hand shook too badly to hold the pencil. Some said Stalingrad was cursed. Others said we were already dead, and this was only hell wearing the mask of a city. I began to believe both. One night during a blizzard, I dreamt her. Perhaps it was no dream that the ruins stirred. The walls groaned like living things. Windows blinked like eyes. The very streets pulsed under my feet. From every alley, every shattered factory, came the voices of the dead. They rose in a howl that shook the snow from the sky. I fell to my knees, clutching the diary to my chest. When I woke, the words were already written on the page. We are the city. We are endless. The next morning, we were ordered to hold a sector of rubble that had once been a school. The building was hollowed by fire, the blackened walls streaked with soot. We dug in with what little ammunition we had left. That night, the footsteps returned, those same slow, deliberate steps outside our walls. I froze, rifle in hand, while the others slept. Through a crack in the ruin, I saw them. Not Russians, not living men, but a line of figures standing in the snow. Germans, Russians, civilians, dozens of them, their wounds still open, their faces pale, their eyes fixed on me. They did not move, did not speak, only watched. I blinked, and they were gone. But the footprints remained, pressed deep into the fresh snow. I did not tell the others, could not. Some things you carry alone. By late January, word spread that we were finished. The ring had closed fully. Relief would never come. Some men still clung to hope, whispering about orders from above. But the rest of us knew. The city had swallowed us whole, and it would not spit us out. I wrote my truth in the diary that night. We fight not against men anymore, but against Stalingrad itself, and we are losing. By February, there was nothing left in us to fight with. Our weapons were useless without ammunition. Our stomachs were hollow pits, our bodies brittle as sticks. Even our will had withered. We no longer marched or held positions. Sweetly existed, waiting for the end. The officers still barked orders, their voices hoarse and desperate, but no one listened anymore. Some clung to routine polishing boots, straightening collars as though such gestures could keep the world from collapsing. Others sat in corners, rocking silently. More than once, I saw men burn the last letters from their families, as if destroying the paper could release them from memory. I wrote in my diary, discipline is dead, hope is dead, only the city remains. Then came the night. I cannot forget the night. The city itself seemed to rise against us. It began with a hum, low at first, like the distant whine of wind through shattered walls. But soon it grew, swelling into a chorus of whispers, 1,000 voices layered over one another. I clamped my hands to my ears, but the sound was inside my skull, rattling my bones. Around me, the others stirred, some screamed, some prayed, some fell into silence with eyes wide in terror. I stumbled outside into the snow, clutching my diary as though it were a weapon, and that is when I saw them, the dead. They stood in ranks across the ruined street. Germans, Russians, civilians, dozens, hundreds, maybe more. Their bodies were broken, their wounds fresh. Some had no faces, others no limbs, yet they stood all the same. Their eyes, black, hollow, endless, were fixed on us. I wanted to lift my rifle, but my arms would not obey. None of us could move. We stood frozen as the dead watched in silence. Then, one soldier, still alive, still breathing, dropped his rifle and staggered toward them with arms outstretched. He vanished into their ranks without a sound. Another man fell to his knees, muttering prayers until his words crumbled into sobs. The dead did not advance. They did not attack. Nay, only watched, patient, unblinking. And then, as suddenly as they had appeared, they were gone. The street was empty once more. But their footprints remained in the snow, hundreds of them, fresh, real. No one spoke of it after. What words could we use? Madness? Hallucination? Fever, perhaps. And yet, in the morning, I opened my diary and found the words already written across a clean page. We are coming. After that night, something in us shattered completely. Men abandoned what little order remained. Some wandered off into the ruins and never returned. Others lay down in the snow and simply closed their eyes. The rest of us waited, too broken to resist, too terrified to hope. When the surrender came, it was almost merciful. The Russians entered the ruins with weary eyes. They did not shout, did not jeer. They simply collected our weapons and led us away like sheep. Some of my comrades wept. Others stared blankly. None cheered. The war was over for us, though in truth it had ended long before. As we marched out of the city, I looked back once. The ruins smoldered, the snow falling thickly over the broken walls. And in that haze, I swore I saw figures watching from the windows, still, silent, patient. The city itself, alive and remembering. That night, in captivity, I opened my diary. The page was already filled. The handwriting was mine, but the words were not. You were left for dead. And yet, you walk away. But you will return. The march into captivity was worse than any battle. We were no longer soldiers, only husks dragging one foot before the other through endless snow. Frost clung to our uniforms like chains. Our ribs poked through our coats, and our eyes were hollow pits, staring at nothing. The Russians drove us forward with gestures more than threats, for they saw what we were, broken men who could barely walk. Some fell along the road and did not rise again. There were no shots, no mercy killings. The snow simply swallowed them, and the column moved on. We were ghosts marching into a graveyard. Yet, somehow, the grave refused us. The camps were nothing more than barbed wire strung around crumbling huts. There was no warmth, no food to speak of, only thin soup and bread that vanished before it reached the stomach. Men fought like animals for crusts. The sick lay in corners, shivering, coughing, rotting alive. The guards watched us with weary indifference, as though we were already half dead and not worth hatred. Kate, at night, I clutched my diary and whispered into it as if it could hear me. I filled its pages with fragments, faces of comrades lost, streets of frozen ruin, whispers in the rubble, spit, and sometimes, though I never recalled writing them, strange words appeared between my sentences. The city keeps you. The city waits. I began to wonder if survival was a blessing or a curse. Why had I, among so many, walked away from Stalingrad? Was it chance? Was it fate? Or had the city marked me, spared me for some reason I dared not name? One night, a fellow prisoner named Weber leaned close as we huddled for warmth. "You saw them, didn't you?" he whispered. I froze. "The dead," he continued, eyes wild. "They followed us out. They are here too, watching." I did not answer. I could not. But I knew he spoke the truth. Even behind barbed wire, even miles from the ruins, I felt their presence. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I saw figures at the edge of the camp, motionless, silent, waiting. No one else spoke of it, but I knew I was not alone in seeing them. The months blurred into one another. Men wasted away, their names forgotten as quickly as they were buried in shallow pits. I wrote each death into my diary, as though recording them would keep their memory alive. Yet, the more I wrote, the less the words felt like my own. Whole passages appeared that I had no memory of penning. You are our witness. You cannot forget. You will carry us. When the war finally ended, those of us who remained were released. I stumbled home, a skeleton in uniform, clutching the diary like a holy relic. My family wept when they saw me, though their joy was tinged with fear at what I had become. I spoke little, for how could I describe what I had seen? Who would believe it? And so I kept silent. Outwardly, I lived, worked, aged. Inwardly, I remained in Stalingrad, trapped in its ruins, haunted by its dead. At night, I still hear the whispers, still see the faces staring from broken windows. Okay, the diary lies by my bedside, its pages filled long ago. Yet sometimes, when I open it, I find new words written in my own hand. You walk away, but you will never leave. Now, decades later, okay, I finally write these words for others to hear. Not for absolution, not for pity, but because the burden is too heavy to carry alone. I was left for dead in Stalingrad, and somehow I walked away. But a part of me never did. A part of me is still there, kneeling in the snow, staring at the endless ranks of the fallen. And when my time comes, when I close my eyes for the last time, I know exactly where I will open them again among the ruins, in the frozen city that never let me go.